everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. You are here today to talk about proclamations, which are unexpected tools of engagement and grassroots advocacy for International Dark Sky Week. If you don't know me already, my name is Amy C. Oliver. I am a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society. I am the chair of the Tucson-Pima County Outdoor Lighting Code Committee, and I work professionally in astronomy and astrophysics. Now, if at any time you need to get a hold of me, you can use this email on this slide. That's amy.carissa.oliver@gmail.com. And I will get back to you as soon as possible. I am going to tell you here today that I am about to go to the American Astronomical Society conference, which I'll be leaving for this weekend. I'll be gone for a week. So if you do email me and I don't get back to you right away, don't worry. You can also reach out to Michael and to Betty Maya if you need immediate assistance and you just can't get a hold of me. So why are we doing this? Proclamations, and I want to make sure that I tell you right out the gate that if you are not in the United States, this document is most likely not called a proclamation. It's probably called a memorial document or a ceremony document or some sort of celebration document. And the best thing for you to do, if you're not 100% sure, is to take one of the samples that we have from last year or the year before and reach out to your local government or whichever government branch you are trying to work with and show them that document so that they understand what it is you're looking for. Now, there will be some jurisdictions that have never done this before. We ran into that last year in a couple of countries. And the great news is they're usually willing to work with you. It may not happen this year for you if they don't have a mechanism for it already, but they're generally very supportive. So now why are we doing this? The thing about these documents is that they're an amazing visual aid that you can use with the media, you can use on social media, that you can use to start a soft conversation about light pollution and outdoor lighting ordinances, as Betty Maya and I have both come to learn, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that, and Betty Maya can as well. But they are what we call in publicity now. So remember, outside of astrophysics, I own a public relations firm and have worked in public relations for over 20 years. And a proclamation is something we call a low effort, high gain, or low output, high return kind of product. So that means that for a relatively small amount of effort we're going to put in, we have the potential to get something very big out of it. And that's a part of why we want to do this every year. It helps spread the word so far and wide because it can be used as this amazing piece of leverage in every conversation you're going to have. So let's talk about what has happened the last couple of years. We launched Proclamations for the very first time with International Dark Sky Week in 2022. And we really only started that about 4, maybe 6 weeks before International Dark Sky Week. And that's a really tight timeline to launch something like this. And we still got 23 proclamations. And when I say we, I mean you guys, advocates, right? You guys all came together and made that happen in a very short time frame. Those all came from state and local governments across the United States. And we leveraged that story into 16 news story mentions and 22.64 million reach. Now in publicity, that doesn't mean that's the number of people who read it. That means the number of people who could have potentially read it if they read every article and every publication. Okay. But that's still really good. And I was really proud of that effort and everything that everybody put into that. So then when 2023 rolled around and Betty Maya and I talked and we decided we wanted to try this again, and Michael became very involved, we decided we wanted to aim for 100 proclamations worldwide. And with your guys' help and all of your commitment, we hit 99 proclamations, including 79 across the greater United States, 19 international, and the first ever tribal nations proclamation. And I want to sit with this for a second because I want to read you some information. Now, this isn't the complete list because I started compiling this list of locations that had given us a proclamation in March of 2023. And at the time that I wrote this note for myself, y'all had put in more than 130 requests for proclamations and had received proclamations from 24 subnational locales across the United States. And that could mean a town, a city, a census designated place, a regional government, a state government. Okay. So that was Arizona, California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Florida, Minnesota, New Mexico, North Dakota, Texas, Utah, Washington, Wisconsin, West Virginia, and Virginia. And we further expanded our reach last year. We got proclamations from, and I'm so sorry if I pronounce most of these incorrectly, the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Reservation Tribal Council, Valgrana, Roccabruna, Monte Rosa, Tornero, De Monte, Caraglio, Bernizzo, and Ison in Italy, Pickering, Markham, and Clarington in Ontario, Canada, and the Shire of Perenjori in Western Australia. So in the latter case, the Shire president agreed to present and read aloud the approved proclamation at Astrotourism Western Australia's International Dark Sky Week Stargazing event on April 22nd of 2023. And that's very cool because that just shows how much support there was for the work you guys were doing in Australia. And also that leveraged on its own into more media attention and coverage. And that's always what we want, is a little bit of a snowball effect. So don't be afraid to ask for that too. There's a lot of different things that different jurisdictions will do for you. And that was a really, really cool one. We also started mounting conversations with the White House, and that's not materialized yet, but we're hoping that there's still a future for that. They do that process a little bit different than most other countries. And also the governments of New Zealand and Aruba that are working on methods for being able to support requests for proclamations and outdoor lighting ordinance conversations. So I also want to show you this, which I just find so incredible. So working professionally in public relations, I don't see numbers like this a lot, except for when I did work with the iPhone. But 904 mentions in our reporting period and 1.295 billion reach. And I know that I'm alone recording this, but I hope you're now all clapping so that I'm not the only one clapping. But this was amazing. And you guys really should feel a great sense of pride about this work. Multiple languages, different publications all across the world, huge publications, Space.com, Forbes, the Dallas Morning News, ANSA, ISNA, Noticia. It's very incredible that this happened and that we were able to all come together and have this sort of impact. And so I want to sort of use that as a springboard to say, and I hope Betty Maya is okay with me challenging this group and saying, I think we could reach 200. I really do. And but that's all up to you guys, right? Because you're the ones who have to really take that helm in your own communities and in your own regions, states, provinces, to really make this happen. And I think that it is doable, especially now that so many more of you have already participated in this process and you know how to go about filling in the templates and adding this additional information and how to submit a proclamation. I really think that it can be done. And for those of you that are new, we now have dozens of people who can offer advice. And I really hope at the end of this presentation, which is going to go a little quick because I'm not physically there to answer questions this time around, I hope you guys will have a really good discussion at the end of this where everyone who has participated in the past can also offer some thoughts. Ellen, if you are out there somewhere from Virginia, please, please, I encourage you to speak up, as you have had an enormous amount of success in this. And because I don't know which session you're in, everybody's going to hear me say that, but amazing work there in Virginia. So make sure that you're reaching out to people and just letting them know that you have questions, or look at the past samples. We have copies of all of the proclamations that were received over the last couple of years, so you can look at those and get a sense of how to do that. So now we need to jump right into talking about proclamation basics, right? And again, for anybody not in the United States, just fill that word in, proclamation. Every time I say proclamation, tell yourself ceremonial document, memorial document, whatever it is, public announcement, whatever it is in your jurisdiction, fill that word in. We're just using proclamation. So what is it? Proclamation is an announcement. Yes, it is. So my cat is back to offer thoughts. Hi. Okay. In a minute. A proclamation is an announcement. It's an official announcement that is issued and signed by local, state, country, province leader. It is a document, so you will be furnished with a hard copy document. Sometimes they're very large. They can be 11 by 17, 16 by 20. They can be very elaborate, or they can be very simple, depending on the type of jurisdiction you're in, and what their resource pool is like for that. And it is always associated with an event of importance. A tool for education and awareness. Proclamations can be used to leverage media support, as you have already seen, and to educate your community about a noble cause. But just like we know now what a proclamation is, we have to learn what it isn't. And this is very important. Proclamations are not a power. They don't give you power or authority for anything. That's very important to know. Very exciting to look at, but they have no power. They are also not enforceable policy or law. You cannot use your proclamation to make people turn out their lights during International Dark Sky Week, or to change the type of light bulbs they're using. You can't make people do anything with a proclamation. It is a document. It recognizes your effort, but it cannot take action. So here's a couple of examples, and I love these. You can see a more simple version of a proclamation. Actually, I'd say this is like middle grade on the right there, and then a little bit more elaborate version on the left. And in Arizona, ours are very elaborate, very large, elaborate documents that come in a very beautiful folder with gold leafing on it. And so it just sort of depends on where you're at, what it will look like. When you do get your proclamation, please, it would be very helpful if you can take a scan or a photo that can be put into the file that we can use. And also make sure that you are asking for permission to be able to post images of your proclamation to social media, to the media, and anywhere else, so that not only you can use them, but so that DarkSky International can use them as well. It's very important we have that permission. Okay. Now, so how do you get a proclamation? Right? I mean, you can't just print one off the internet, and sometimes calling the government can feel a little bit scary, but I assure you, the government is there to serve their constituents, which is you. And so you have every right to call and to ask questions about how to get a proclamation. And I highly encourage you to give it a try. How do you get it? Research. So first of all, you want to use a search engine like Google, or call your local government offices to find out how they handle these ceremonial document requests. That's really easy. I'm going to show you a little bit more about Googling in a minute. If that doesn't work for you, right? If you cannot find this process online, call your local government, show them an example of it. Any sample will do. And then prepare. So we already have a template for you. And if you have participated in the past, then you have a template of your own that you can use. Just want to make sure that you update it, and we will show you the template, or at least parts of it, here in just a minute. But there is a kit that you can access that will have that in there. Now, then you want to submit it, and you need to make sure you submit it following local government guidelines. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Every government has different guidelines in some way, shape, or form. And so it's really important that you are paying attention to those guidelines, because even the template can only help you so far, right? It can help you create some global, national, and then regional content, and then also direct you on how to localize some of your statements, but it cannot meet all of the requirements for you. So when you're doing research, look, I just typed into Google San Diego City proclamation request, and the results popped right up. And that was super, super easy. A lot of times it is going to be that easy. If your jurisdiction has a really excellent web presence, you can expect it to be quite a bit easier to find. And so same thing here. When I looked in, I think this is Missouri. I'm sitting a little bit further back from my computer, so I can't see the entire screen here, but that's for state level. And so that was also fairly easy. Sometimes you're going to have to dig for it, but ultimately you should be able to find what you need now. Once you get this information, it's really important, or get to the webpage with this information, very, very important that you pay attention. First, because there is a timeline, and with proclamations, I want to really impress upon you that you don't want to receive your proclamation on International Dark Sky Week. That doesn't give you any time to leverage it. So at the very latest, you want to aim to receive your proclamation by the 29th or 30th of March. And that's at the very latest. That is really when you want to do that. Some jurisdictions won't give you a choice. They will give you your proclamation a specific number of days before your event. But if you can get it sooner, please do try to do that. So now that we know, okay, say we want to receive this by March 30th, so there's 2 weeks to get the media involved and covering the story, especially if you want media to go out that says, you know, the governor of Arizona has declared International Dark Sky Week. It's coming up, and here's a list of the events you can attend. You want to make sure that that gets out well in advance to the public. You can also do aftermath media, which means you can say, you know, International Dark Sky Week just happened and the government, you know, wrote this proclamation. But in any case, if you're going to have that by March 30th, then you need to pay attention to the timeline. Okay. So a lot of jurisdictions will say anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Some are even longer than that, because they have to be approved by a county council. And so that means you are right now in the time period where you'll need to write and submit your grant, your grant, excuse me. I've had one of those weeks at work where I've been writing a grant, but you're writing your proclamation. And so if there is a 6 week requirement, think back from March 30th, right? That's the month of March, and halfway through April. I mean, oh my goodness, halfway through February. Excuse me, you guys, you've got to work backwards, not forwards. If you need it by March 30th, you need to submit by about February 12th. Okay, so consider that. And if it is 8 weeks, you want to submit by the first week of February. So it's really important that you're thinking about that. Some can even go as long as 10 weeks, and that means you'll want to submit within the next couple of weeks. Now, you also need to think about residency in some jurisdictions. For example, Connecticut, they require the person requesting it to be a resident of the state of Connecticut who also has a Connecticut address. And that proclamation will be mailed to that address, or you can pick it up. And the state of Arizona has not been so stingy about that. And even when I was out of the country for quite a while last year, allowed me to mail it directly to to the IDA office, or excuse me, the DarkSky International office. So that's a consideration that you need to make as well. If you need to get help, if you're writing for a jurisdiction that you can't get to, maybe it's several hours away. In Arizona, you know, our state government office is about 4 hours from my house. I don't want to drive there too often. So it's helpful that they allow me to mail it, or I'd have to have someone pick it up. And there may also be limits on your word count or the number of whereas statements. In Arizona, we can have 7 to 9 whereas statements, but in Connecticut, we could only have 3. So it's really important to pay attention to those types of limits. There may also be a word count limit. Now, your must-haves, you want to make sure that you're following the template that you have, you know, your more global broad statements, your statewide, local, or regional significance. Now, it's really very important when you are getting a proclamation, if you are in a town and they want town-based significance and you are writing a very broad-based statewide perspective, you may not receive your proclamation. And so it's very important that even if, say, you know, me, right, that I live in Sarita, Arizona, if I want that proclamation, I should not submit the same proclamation for the state of Arizona as I do for Sarita. I want to make sure that I localize that to that town. And so make sure that you're doing that. It's okay to have some of the same content, but always make sure that there's some connection, right? We don't want to submit to a state level government and have zero connection to that state level government. Now, at least 3 whereas statements. So you want to make sure that you provide those and also be correct in your formatting and spelling. Now, here's an example of some of the statements that you'll be able to pull out of the template and that Betty Maya will provide to you. And you can just sort of look at those. There are a number of places where you can see that we have put in brackets area to help you with localizing your whereas statements. So if you're really uncomfortable doing this, or you don't have as much information about light pollution or dark skies in your area, this is a really good place to start. So we have created these sort of a broad-based statements that can then still be localized. If you have more exact information, that's important. Now here you're actually looking at 8 whereas statements. Remember what I said about Connecticut not wanting that many. So in a lot of cases, you can actually scrunch those down into short paragraphs. You don't want to create a big, huge block of content. That will probably lead to you not receiving your proclamation. But this still remains readable. And so you can do things like this if you really had to. Now, here's a really good example of where I've made content very localized for the state of Arizona. And we are very lucky in Arizona because we have a ton of information to talk about. And I'm going to read this one out, which is Arizona hosts the world's largest optical telescope and 10% of all the world's greatest or largest telescopes. And optical astronomy, which is both hindered and endangered by unfettered light pollution, represents a statewide capital investment of more than 1.3 billion and an annual economic return of over 250 million, including an indirect attachment to more than 150,000 jobs throughout the aerospace and defense sector. And whereas Arizona is home to dozens of nocturnal wildlife species, including the black-footed ferret, one of the most endangered mammals on the North American continent, and these species rely on undisturbed night environments to hunt, mate, and thrive. So this is an excerpt of the proclamation that we wrote for the state government of Arizona last year, because we know that our governor cares an awful lot about economic health and also environmental health and creating a healthy living environment for human beings and all of Arizona's inhabitants. So it's a really good idea to know what the agenda is of the political figure who has to sign your proclamation and make it real, because they will become probably slightly more invested and interested in what you are doing. So just consider that. It's not an absolute necessity. You don't have to do that, but it's definitely that nice little touch that can get you maybe that person coming to your event to read out your proclamation, or being willing to read it on camera. That happens in a couple of jurisdictions in Texas. You can make that request. if you ask far enough in advance. And so the more aligned you are with that government leader's agenda and policy priorities, the more likely you are to be able to get these things. The other kind of exciting thing we're asking for in Arizona and a couple of other jurisdictions is for them to unlight our Capitol buildings for at least a night, or light them up red, because red light is the light that does not bounce or scatter into the night. And so it's a really exciting opportunity to be able to do that type of thing. And as you start learning more about proclamations and these requests that you can make, you're going to find, I think, all sorts of really interesting things that you can do and can discuss with your local government. So how do we put proclamations to work? It already sounds like they're doing a lot of work, but they don't do anything by themselves, except in some cases live forever on a government website in some like weird back corner that no one can find. So it's important that we do something with them. And that is why it is so important that you get permission to use them. So you can see here in that bottom left-hand corner, I say again what I have said a couple of times already in this presentation, is that in most localities, you need written permission to share images from the government office that issued your proclamation. Okay, so it's really important to get that permission. I would love this year to do some sort of demo reel or highlight campaign for social media with Betty, Maya, and Michael, where we actually get to talk about every single proclamation that was received. We can't really do that without permission, right? So make sure that you're asking for that permission, either at the time you ask for your proclamation, if the process is a little less formal, or after you have received it. So post your proclamation. That is one of the easiest ways to be able to get leverage, is to post it out so that people can share it and be as excited about it as you are. Make sure that you distribute it. So get permission to send a picture of that proclamation to the media, and then also leverage it. So pitch, and I will talk about this in just a second, what this means. Pitch your project for local television and radio news interviews, and use the time to talk about dark skies. So pitching this is sort of what a pitch looks like if you were going to write it via email. And you write a very, very short and sweet little email. If you have events, you can also put the dates and times of your events in here. But here you'll note that I had written this to the state of Utah in 2022 about International Dark Sky Week. And you know, Utah, you can say all sorts of things about dark skies and how much the government supports it, because it's true. Utah has so many dark sky parks and dark sky communities, and really loves dark sky tourism. And so that's an easy win. If you have that sort of thing going on in your local government, you can really leverage that with the media as well. And I can't remember now if I already mentioned, you know, we'll be doing that in Santa Cruz County, Arizona. This year we have a dark skies tourism agenda in Santa Cruz County now, where they want to start refocusing the energy and the financial resources of the community into building a dark skies tourism sector. And so the proclamation that goes down to Santa Cruz County to the Board of Supervisors will be very heavily centered around that type of effort. And of course, the Whipple Observatory is located in Santa Cruz County as well. So there's a lot of connection going on there. There is and here's a plug for Betty Maya, you know, a community going through the dark sky community application process, and a park going through the dark sky parks process, all in that county. So there's a lot going on that can go into that proclamation. And if you are really tapped in to what's going on in dark skies and also in the government in your community, you can leverage that type of information for your proclamation as well as for your media pitch. So remember that all of that sort of works together. Now, this left-hand corner, I want to make sure you saw this, says, never tell the media or anyone that you have a proclamation unless you have it in your possession. I cannot tell you how important that is. You cannot tell them you have this unless you are holding it in your hands. even if someone has told you that you will receive it, if you do not have it, please do not tell the media that you have one. That's really important. They're not legal documents, but they are still official documents signed by a government official. You do not want to inadvertently lie to the media or to the community that you have something you don't have. If a signed copy is not provided to the media when you tell them you have it, they will reach out to the government to get it. And if it does not exist, that could be very problematic for your relationship, for DarkSky's relationships with the media, with the government. So make sure that you're very careful about that, and just be very aware, right? You wouldn't tell someone you have $1 million to purchase a house if you really only have $250,000. Same kind of concept. So what now? So what do? We can get a ton of positive media attention out of this. And the big question then becomes, but can proclamations really help us drive change in policy? And the answer is yes, because they start a conversation about policy. And it is a soft opening. The thing is that there are a lot of places where conversations about light pollution are tough to have. Tucson, we are a dark sky community, and we are the home base of multiple astronomy research facilities and space missions, even NASA missions, and it's still a difficult conversation to have for 1,000,001 reasons. But what I love about proclamations is that they are a non-confrontational factual document, right? They're a positive educational tool, and they mean getting facts on the record. So a policymaker had to sign this document, even if it has no legal power, which means that they are openly recognizing the facts contained within this document. And that is so powerful because it gives you the opportunity to first approach those individuals who have supported this for you and start a conversation with them. And also gives you a little bit of leverage to talk about those same facts and know that they are on the record. So it's just one of those things where I really want to encourage you to think about it in that way. And I hope that Betty Maya will tell her story of how in 2022, she applied for or requested a proclamation and it didn't come on time. But the relationships that she built in the conversations surrounding the proclamation gave her that soft in to have conversations in her community. And that is so incredibly important to be able to do that. Now we're at the end of my portion of this conversation and presentation today. So again, I want to point you to my email if you need to get in touch with me, amy.carissa.oliver@gmail.com. And again, I'll be out of town for several days, so don't worry if you do not hear from me, but Betty Maya can talk to you now more about your kit for this, which has the template in it and some other information. And then we will have a new spreadsheet for this year for tracking. And so that she can talk to you a little bit more about that. And just, I really want to tell you guys again how amazing you are and the amount of effort that you put in and the care that you provide to being advocates for dark skies and helping us to change the way that light pollution impacts the world is amazing. And I hope that you will use this opportunity to branch out and really learn about how dark skies impact many different parts of your communities. In Arizona, we're going to have such a blast this year for International Dark Sky Week because there's a lot going on. Just this last spring, we found a glowworm on the observatory at an altitude where it just shouldn't be. And so this year, right around International Dark Sky Week, we get to launch our project to go find it and learn more about it and figure out who this little resident is that lives on our site that we never really noticed before. I think we always knew it was there, but hadn't really thought about it in this context until I started working with the National Park Service on some events through Dark Sky International through our Southern Arizona chapter. And so we have a whole new thing to write about when we request proclamations. And so I really hope you'll think about that. What are the things that matter to your community, wherever you are in the world, and how can you leverage that information into your proclamation to then leverage a conversation? And I also want to say, last thing is that I highly encourage you to partner with other organizations. Remember that the DarkSky International is this amazing, huge organization, and there are other complementary organizations out there. So in Arizona, sure, we the astronomers could go it alone, or DarkSky International could go it alone, but we can pair together. And we can invite our friends at the Sky Island Alliance and Para, and the Sierra Club and the Audubon Society. And there's all these different groups that can be involved. And so think about that, because especially if you're struggling with what to put into your proclamation, there are groups out there who have the words and the thoughts to provide to you, and you can partner with them on this and have a much more robust conversation about light pollution and dark skies in your community during International Dark Sky Week, and invite those people in. Let them have some of that light and that spotlight. Thank you again, guys, just so much for coming to this and for being who you are. I don't have anything not dorky to say at the end of a presentation meant to rally the troops and get everyone excited to do a project. So I'm just going to say stars are cool. And thank you again for listening. I will see you guys soon.